Hi, I'm Stan Smith, and this video is part of a 31-day series, or a devotional really, and it's called Learn to Hear from God. And I believe that ordinary people are meant to hear from God, and I believe that part of why Jesus came into the world, it's not just to get us into heaven when we die, but it's also to get heaven into the earth while we live. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a time when I heard from God, and it happened recently. I had just begun the writing for this series, but I hadn't started any of the videos yet. And I had asked God, Lord, am I really doing the right thing with this? And then he spoke to me while I was getting an MRI medical test, because I've been through a bout with a brain tumor, and that happened around Valentine's Day this year, give or take a couple of days. And it appears I'm perfectly healed at this point, but we don't know yet. There have to be ongoing tests to make sure the cancer doesn't come back. And so there I went in for my MRI. And the key to it is you have to lie perfectly still. And if they're scanning your head, then the important thing is you can't move your head. Naturally, you get in there and your nose itches or something, and you can't do one thing about it. Just talking about it. Just got my nose itching. Well, okay, so you have to lie there perfectly still for 20 or 30 minutes. That's not the end of the world. Even I can do that. But if I get thinking about something funny, that'll get me laughing. And then my body begins to shake, and it's hard to keep your head still when your body shakes. So as they put me on a little trolley and stuck my head in a cradle, and then they rolled me in to this little housing they have where they do the MRI. They rolled me in there, and I decided that I would just focus my heart on the Lord himself and try to dial into the presence of God. Jesus said, I'm with you always, even to the ends of the world. So if you're in the middle of getting an MRI, that's a good time to sense the presence of Jesus. So I lay there, and as I turned my attention to him, all of a sudden, I remembered a painting that I saw 12 or maybe 15 years ago. I think it was in an art gallery in Chelsea, Michigan. I could be wrong, but I think it was there. And what it was a painting. It was in a slightly modern style. I don't know enough about art to identify exactly the style, but there were some modern elements in what had been done. And it was somewhere in a city, and Jesus had knocked at a door, and nobody had answered. And you could tell from the look on his face and from his body language that he had knocked and knocked and knocked, but there had been no response. And the incredible look of disappointment on his face, I found it very moving. Well, the price for the painting was $1,000, and I am not enough of a high roller to be able to buy $1,000 paintings these days. So I had to live without it, but it was a painting I would have loved to have had. Nevertheless, all these years later, as I lay on that little trolley in that peculiar housing they have where they give MRIs, and as I lay there, thinking about Jesus, that picture came to mind, and of course it relates to the verse in the book of Revelation, a very familiar verse. Some of us may have even come to Christ through hearing a preacher take this verse. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and sup with him, and he with me. What is Jesus saying? Well, some evangelists preach salvation from this, and that's good. If you got saved from hearing someone preach this verse, that's a wonderful way to come into the kingdom of God. But what's it all about? It turns out, as you read the context, that he was talking to the church. But I think there's room to understand that he's talking not only to the church today, but he's talking to a whole generation. He's talking to a generation who live in a season of lukewarmness. And he says, I'm standing on the outside. He says, there are things I want to talk to my people about. And I can't talk to them about them, so I'm standing at the door of your heart and I'm knocking. I want to come in. If you hear my voice, open the door and let me come in, because I want to talk to you. and let's sit down and have a meal together. Let's just relax together and have a nice time together. But I want to talk to you. Well, now, don't get the idea that Jesus is just a stern, hard taskmaster who's going to come in and say, you got to cut out doing this and that. You got to stop watching TV so much, or, whatever it would be. We just sometimes think Jesus is some great heavenly spoil sport, but that's not really what it's all about. There are some other issues. As I lay there, I began to weep in the presence of God, thinking about the things that God could say if someone would listen to him, and thinking about the difference that could be made in human history if someone would listen to God. It could be the history of a family, the history of a neighborhood, the history of a city or a region or a nation. God could make a huge impact if people would take it seriously to listen for his voice. God knows how to cure cancer, how to cure AIDS, how to cure Alzheimer's. If you're a medical researcher, start learning to hear the voice of Jesus. There's no telling what he'll tell you. He's not going to do all your thinking for you. But all you need is one signpost from him pointing you down a new avenue of research, and you'll make the discoveries that will change lives. And then in terms, who knows what kind of changes those people will make in the history that lies ahead. Well, that's just one area. But you see, you could be a school teacher, and as you start hearing from Jesus, he'll begin telling you how to unlock the treasure that is in the children you teach. We could go on and on. See, the list is endless. But he has things he wants to say. He's a God filled with many wonderful ideas. And he's looking for friends he can talk to about these things. He doesn't say, I want to come in and put you to work. I want to come in and tell you everything that's wrong with you. He says, I want to come in and have a meal with you. I want to sit down with you and have a nice, friendly dinner together. So what's he talking about? It's not that Jesus is hungry for a hamburger and French fries. It's that he's hungry for fellowship. And he has things he'll tell you and things he'll tell me. Well, by the time I had finished digesting what came to me as I lay there on that little trolley in that metal doghouse they do the MRI in, the presence of God had brought me to tears. My biggest difficulty was it was hard not to just sob uncontrollably, which would have shaken my body and in turn would have moved my head and messed up everything, so I had to leave that alone. But somehow I stifled myself, and by the time I came out of that little doghouse they put you in, by the time I got out of there, I knew that God himself is interested in teaching you to know his voice. Oh, he has wonderful things to tell you. And so that's really what this is all about. I don't have all the answers. I don't even want all the answers. I simply want to walk with Jesus, and this is what this whole series is about. Learn to walk with Jesus and let him do the talking. He'll do the real work. He'll do the real teaching. And so if I do my job right, you'll put your hand in his hand and he'll do the real teaching. That's what I hope to see God do in this 31-day devotional.